Good morning, y'all. This is David, the Georgia photographer. Today, we'll do some street photography. I've got this little 35 to 105 push-pull zoom lens on here, and what my plan is to take it and one other tool. Let me grab that. One other piece of equipment is the 50mm f1.4. This is a pre-AI lens. You can tell by a couple of different ways. One, it doesn't have the little notch milled in it for the indexing pin, the locator pin, whatever that little plunger is. It's on the back of the AIS. Also, it doesn't have the notch for the aperture feeler. I'm going to take this one to give me some real good shallow depth of field, and then I'm going to carry this one because of the zoom functionality. That's the only two lenses I'm going to take. And my newest tool in that arsenal is this. This one's by Think Tank Photo. There's a bunch of companies make these little pouches, but it's a dump pouch for a lens, and you just wear it on your belt. And that's what my plan is, just take this and leave the whole bag here so I don't have to deal with carrying all that stuff everywhere I go. It just simplifies the process, makes it a lot lighter, a lot more nimble operation. I always try to get a couple of shots early on to kind of break the ice, sort of get me in the mood or get the flow of the ideas going. Seems to help. That way I can actually start looking for, interesting compositions and things. I always try to get some architectural stuff too, because I just like it. I love the color contrast between the yellow bicycle and the red bricks. It just gives it a good look. Just a quick note about the settings I'm using today. I'm shooting wide open with this zoom. I typically like to shoot wide open. It's just the way I like to shoot. Now I run my ISO at 640 on the XT3, and then I lock it so it doesn't move. I'm running single shutter mode. I've got my shutter speed on automatic. The camera is doing enough mathematics based on the light hitting the sensor that it doesn't know the aperture, but it doesn't need it, apparently, to give me a good measurement for a good exposure. I'm running exposure compensation. If I want it brighter or dimmer, then I just turn it up or down on the exposure compensation dial and get the exposure like I want in the viewfinder. That's the settings I normally use when I run my street gear for my XT3 when I do my street photography sessions. It's just cold enough that it's unpleasant. My fingers keep getting cold and I keep having to warm them up in my coat so I can feel the camera. I got a few shots down here on the bridge, but there's not a lot happening. Most people are just driving to and from work. As you can see, there's the traffic coming into Chattanooga. That's Riverfront Parkway, which is like Amnicola Highway if you're going out that way a little bit. Hey look, someone realized I'm vlogging. I keep turning around and seeing shots that I could have got had I been paying better attention. There's a woman walked by with her dog a while ago, walking her dog. Then I just happened to turn around as she was heading out of frame on the other side of the bridge. That's the way it works sometimes, The only way you can get street photography is to go out into the street and do photography. I really can't go up to Rembrandt's, which is a coffee shop right over that way, and see what I can find, because they have a photography ban. That's private property and you have to pay them for a permit to do photography there, and I refuse to pay for the permit. It's just, there's so much free photography on the streets of Chattanooga. Why would I pay just to shoot in that one little area? I may try to find me a coffee shop closer. There's a Starbucks at the foot of the hill. I may go there. Another subject I'd want to talk about a little bit is, ever since I did my Z50 videos and how I actually think that that's a good camera for entry-level photographer who's wanting into the mirrorless space, it's come to my attention that a lot of people are curious about photography, but they don't know what camera to get. They have this fear of making the wrong decision, and it's strong enough that indecision is worse than wrong decision in my book. You just need to get a piece of equipment and start using it, but there are some devices are better than others. If I had my choices about it, I would pick certain cameras over others if I was just starting out. Based on my knowledge of camera equipment that I've accumulated over the years, there's features on cameras that I would prefer to have that outweigh others. Ah, the dangers of running manual focus. This would have been such an epic photo with the blue coat and the yellow leaves, but I missed focus. Chance you take. That sea of yellow leaves is pretty epic. Finding somebody walking through that with a solid color shirt on or coat is pretty special. Maybe I'll find something interesting down this way. I know there's a Starbucks right over there, so I'm gonna head over there and get me a cup of coffee. I've already had 2 or 3 today. Features that I would prefer on a beginning camera in 2019 would be as many external functions as possible that removes the need to dive into menu. Having to dive menus to set things like shutter speed or aperture or ISO seems silly at this point when there's so many cameras on the market that you can buy second-handed and get them for a song, that it just doesn't make sense to spend the kind of money that they're wanting for a new one that would force you to do that. You can program buttons on the newer ones like the Z50 or this XT3. Well, the XT3 isn't a good example because it has a bunch of external buttons. What you want is, you want at least to have your shutter speed, your ISO, and your aperture controls on the outside of the camera. Not where you have to hit a menu function or a second function button to access. Cameras like this D200 I bought, it's a perfect example of that. It's a great little DSLR. It doesn't have a super high resolution sensor in it, but it's 10.2 megapixel, I think. If you're printing 8x10s and smaller, perfect camera. If you're just getting into photography, I would recommend you do 4x6 prints or maybe 5x7s at some point. 4x6s are fairly inexpensive to print, but printing your work is important. And even if you just print 4x6 snapshot size prints, it allows you to examine your work in a physical format, not just looking at them on a screen. But if you get the opportunity to pick one up, you can understand why the D200 is such a value. If I was recommending one, it would be one of them and maybe this lens, or maybe the D200 has a screwdriver focus motor in the body. So you can use the old AF series lenses that have the screw focus, and they're very good lenses and they're very inexpensive. So you could get maybe the 35 to 135. You could get that 18 to 200 G series, the VR. You can buy those lenses fairly inexpensive now. If you wanted to like have a bokeh monster, you could get maybe the 35 f1.8 G series. And all those lenses will fit directly on that D200 and give you phenomenal results right out of the box. I would probably do the 35 to 135 and then that 35 millimeter f1.8 and play with just those 2 lenses for a year. And you may find that you don't need any other lenses. You may find that you like the wider end of the spectrum and you're constantly looking for 18, 20 millimeters and you want to get wider and wider, maybe, I don't know, to each his own. At the end of the day, the point is, I would recommend something like that over maybe a D3200 or maybe a D40. The problem with the D40 is that it doesn't have all of the functions on the outside. Just like I mentioned, if you want to change shutter speed and aperture in manual mode, there's an extra button you have to work. You have to work it through a sequence, and like on this camera, there's your shutter speed, there's your ISO, and your aperture is right here on this ring. It's all external and it's isolated from one another. There's no secondary operations required. It just makes it easier to take photos. That's my basic recommendation for a beginner camera. I'd go on eBay and I'd start looking through listings for D200s, maybe even D300s. And if I was looking for a camera, I wouldn't worry about what kind of memory it uses. That's why the D200 is appealing to me. That's why I have one. It uses a CF card, and that doesn't bother me because card readers today will read CF cards. It's not a real big thing. I'm gonna have to move down the street and get a little quieter. This is too loud. Well, my whole point is that you don't have to buy the latest and greatest device to get good photos. You just need one to practice with, and you can make good photos with whatever you have. I would just say, don't overwhelm yourself with you know, a $3,000 camera body and $1,000 lenses just to get into a hobby. You can do it so much more economical and have a lot of fun with it. I mean, you just don't have to spend a small fortune to get good photos. Most of it's in here, and just keep that in mind. So if you get the opportunity to get a nice camera, go for it, but don't think that you can't get good photos without an X-T3 and the 56mm f1.2. You can get great photos without all that crap. You just need to apply yourself, learn some of the basic kind of rules of photography, you know, things like the rule of thirds and, you know, contrasting color photography. The color wheel is pretty important. Like the photo I was trying to find earlier of the yellow leaves and the blue overcoat, that looked real good. Those prime colors look real good in photos, but don't concern yourself too much with equipment. Equipment doesn't get good photos. Equipment is basically, it's a tool. Without the tools, you can't do the job, but you don't need the most expensive tools in the toolbox to be able to do a good job. You need the right tools. All is right with the world now. Got me a latte. Yeah, I got a couple of shots of the barista while he was making it. It's, you know, I had to bump the ISO in there. I had to go to 6400 to get a reasonable shutter speed with a decent exposure inside Starbucks. That's how dim it is in there compared to just walking outside on an overcast day. How many full stops is that? 1200's 1, 2400's 2, 4800's 3. So it'd be about 3.5 stops. Wow. I just wanted to share my thoughts about someone, because people keep asking me if I think the Z50 is the perfect beginner camera. And no camera is the perfect beginner camera. There's lots of good cameras, but the Z50 is just one of many. I think it's a great little mirrorless beginner camera, or a lightweight. It'd be a great street photography camera once you remap some of the controls to where you could get the ISO and shutter speed and aperture pretty easily. Coupled with a good Z series lens, it'll take surprisingly sharp photos. Do you need it to get good photos? Nah, you don't need it. I mean, you just need a camera. You would think that down here by the river it'd be a kind of a target-rich environment for street photography, but what most people are doing is just walking around reading their phones, and albeit they're doing something, it's to the point of monotony that it's been done so much. You know, it comes a point when you just get tired of seeing people surfing their phones. I mean, it ain't even interesting anymore. I guarantee you there's 13 bazillion pictures of people surfing smartphones and smoking cigarettes in street photos. Although, you know, you can get the occasional interesting shot of something like that. People just walking down the sidewalk surfing their phone, it's not interesting enough anymore. I'm looking for something else. So I'm gonna head to the top of the hill. I'm gonna probably head up towards the UTC campus out on Macaulay Avenue and maybe down Georgia Avenue over to it. Well, I've made it here to the entrance. That's the University of Tennessee of Chattanooga campus sign out front on Macaulay Avenue. Unfortunately, I didn't plan on there being all these cars parked in front of the signs. I can't Photoshop that out. You know, that's like master level wizard stuff there. So everybody's drinking coffee or surfing their phone. Yeah. So it's not like there's anything interesting to photograph here anyway. I don't know. Yeah, the girl shivering as she walked, that was pretty good, but if you can't get something like that, it's just people walking down a sidewalk. We'll go somewhere else. Well, I've opted to go back over to the truck and drive over to the west end because it's a pretty long walk from here and it's already 10 a.m. I really need to head on back to Trenton. I need to go back and play with that new dog. Yeah, we have a dog. Well, it's a very small dog. Just exactly what is an Abel Maple? I guess it's a guy's name. You know, whoever commissioned the construction of the building, I guess they get to name it after them. And it should be right here. Yeah, check this out. There is an alley in Jerusalem just like this. I'm gonna get back here and get a photo of it from the end. That way we can compare photos. Photos are pretty cool, but they need a human. I'm gonna stand here a few minutes and wait and see if I can get a person in front of this alley or in it at least. Yeah, it makes for a better picture with a person in it, doesn't it? Even if they're just walking, it doesn't do anything really unusual to the frame, but it makes it for a more interesting photo. If you enjoyed this video of me doing some simple street photography in Chattanooga, I appreciate that thumbs up and the subscribe button's down there and that notification bell and all that good jazz. And like I said, if you haven't done it yet, the Georgia Photographer Gathering is a live Facebook page, and it allows anybody that joins it to post and comment and all that sort of thing. And I've been periodically checking for people to sign up. I'm trying to set it to where it automatically accepts, but I haven't figured out how to do it yet. I don't know. I just can't figure it out. But with that aside, I appreciate you guys watching. And until next time, get your camera out and go take a picture with it. All right, we'll see y'all.